exhale. Inhale and exhale.
Oh, thank you, Linda. That just took away any tension anybody might have had driving in on the snowy roads this morning. And synchronicity. I just received an email from one of our congregants who can't make it in, and she asked that she provided a meditation about breathing in and breathing out, and if we would do that and think of her, and if she does that, she thinks of us as a way of staying connected when we're apart. So then you come up with that song, so I love it. How beautiful is that? So we just started a series last week, How Then Shall We Live, inspired by a book from Wayne Muller. And he talks about that there's 4 questions that really have shaped all spiritual journeys. Who am I, who we talked about last week, and we're going to continue a little bit on this week because there's a lot to know about who we are. What do I love? How shall I live knowing I will die? And what gifts will I give to the family of the earth? So, back to this whole thing, who are you? Who are we? And there's so many ways to describe who we are. We got our name, we have our relationships, we have our positions. We also have descriptions of ourselves from the past. You know, that whatever that past might have been for us, we have those labels. And different times in our life, we label ourselves, name ourselves with those portions of ourselves. But in truth, we are all of those, but we are so much more, including the shadow part of ourselves. It's just like we talked about the body this morning, your favorite part. You could not name one part without kind of thinking about another part, and another part, another part. We're a whole. Even I didn't ask you which part don't you like, because we want to focus on what we do love, but we know there's parts of our bodies that we may not have chosen to be our favorite. But we couldn't exist without all of those parts. So it is with our identity of who we are. It's all of us. You know, that old movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And those are very loose terms that we might be using there. So what is our sacred shadow self? And I love this. Think about this. Your shadow exists because light that traveled 93 million miles from the sun, unobstructed, was deprived of reaching the last few feet because of you. We are a guilt-free place. I just want you to think about that. Because metaphysically, think about that. The light that we are, the only thing that prevents it from being expressed in this world is because of us. The only thing that keeps that perfect spiritual light from being expressed is the thoughts that we hold, the erroneous thoughts we hold, the decision that we have to pull in to play small, whatever that might be. So there's a lot of descriptions of the shadow self. Scott Peck, who wrote The Road Less Traveled, said that it is those aspects of ourselves that we do not want to recognize, and that we continually attempt to sweep under the rug of consciousness. And that's true. There's some stuff back there that we don't necessarily want to recognize within ourselves. Then there's this poet, Robert Bly, who said, it's a long bag that we drag behind us, parts of ourselves that our parents or our community didn't approve of. And I will guarantee you that anything that exists in the subconscious, in that shadow part that we're not acknowledging, at some point we decided the message from something outside of ourselves said this part isn't good, this part isn't worthy, this part is broken. It might not even been said, but we interpreted it that way, and we decided to throw it over our shoulder into that big bag, you know, to carry with us, the kind of albatross that slows us down from being too much in life. Then Maria Namath, who's a wonderful prosperity teacher, she said, what is the awful truth about you? The shadow side is the person you are afraid to be. Wow, if that doesn't stop you in your track. You know, that whole thing Marianne Williamson had written about, you know, who are you to play small, right? We were given all these gifts, and it's, why do we want to shrink it in to be, not take up too much room in the world, not take up too much consciousness, like there's some kind of limitation to love or to breath, to breathing in, that we want to hold ourselves in. Though we may think the shadow side means broken, it is not that we're defective in any way. It's, the shadow side is our humanness, all those different aspects of our humanness that we might not be so accepting of because of whatever judgments or criticism or erroneous concepts that we picked up, maybe even when we were in the cradle, that we picked up a vibe that this isn't the greatest thing to share, this isn't a laudable part of you. It has been said that up to 70% of our brain is devoted to keeping us safe, to find the threat, detect threats. So it's not surprising that we look at ourselves as a threat to ourselves, that our safety determines that those things that we think are weaknesses, our vulnerabilities, are ugly, whatever that is, that we hide them because we're still biologically geared like the cavemen. Think about it. I mean, here we are so far advanced and we're still physically operating with responses that kept us safe from dinosaurs. You know, it doesn't make sense, but that is that unconscious thing that's working in through us. So which part of us is the shadow? I love this picture. I love this picture. Which part of us is the shadow? There can be some pretty wonderful parts back there, too. Under Jungian analysis, it says that the shadow is a mythological name for all that is within us, which we cannot directly show. And we say we cannot directly show. The only reason we can't directly show it is because we determined that it's risky, that it's a threat to us if we let this part of ourselves show, that we make mistakes, that we feel guilty about something, have regrets about something, that we are, just somehow there's a weakness there that could make us real vulnerable to our own safety. And Carolyn Myss, if you've read her book, she's just a lovely, inspiring author. She says, these mysteries that are woven into the shadow material are designed to bring forth the part of you that doesn't know God. Wow, there's another one to contemplate and take that in deeply. The stuff that's in the shadow, if we say there's only one power and one presence, that has to be within our shadow too. But we're somehow saying there's God, there's oneness, and then there's this part that we'll keep in the shadows, the part that doesn't know God yet, the part that we're not ready or willing to bring forward into our life. So what are we hiding from ourselves? I love this little graphic. The tree of knowledge and the tree of commonly accepted misconceptions. I think we chose the second tree when we bit the apple, when we took on that knowledge of commonly accepted misconceptions of life, of other people, of all those different things. And the irony of our shadow side, if you can think of some of those parts of you that you don't like to bring forward, maybe with really close friends, but preferably not at all, because it's a really vulnerable place to be in. The irony is, the truth is, we are the only ones that think we're hiding it. If it's part of us, other people can see it, right? But we go around like with blinders on. If I can't see it, nobody else can, right? I mean, isn't that human irony? I mean, we are such funny creatures that we do this whole dance with ourselves. This whole thing about the shadow reminded me of a teaching, a parable of Jesus, when he said, you are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. If you build a city up there, everybody can see it. He says, no one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, so it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to God. Letting ourselves be seen. All of us do such good works, we don't even realize sometimes that we're doing good works. That smile, that phone call, an acknowledgement to somebody who's not seen that's out in the service world. There's so many ways that we serve that we just don't realize. I think the shadow side is so prevalent in our society because we live in this relative world where everything is judged in relationship to other things. Short and tall, abundance and lack. How about health and illness? And we know it's not quite so black and white, that there's degrees on the spectrum of how we judge things. But we have a tendency to take it to the umpteenth end, at one side or the other. And if I look at that yin and yang sign, there's always the other color in each side. That there is nothing that is pure black, pure white. That everything is a mixture, it's a continuum that doesn't have an absolute end. So that we're going to be all of those things, even those parts that may not be our proudest at this moment, because we are putting a label to it. There's a wonderful story in Wayne Muller's book. It really choked me up when I read it, because you'll see if you read it in the book, or I'll give you the synopsis of it now. Wayne Muller was doing a retreat, and there was this young woman there, Rose, and one of the processes were to go through magazines and pick out pictures that kind of look like you. You're going to share your story in the retreat. And he looked over at this one young woman, whose name was Rose, And she sat there with tears in her eyes. And she said, I can never find pictures of people that look like me unless I go to National Geographic. She was Latino, and she had darker brown skin, and all the magazines show very white, light-skinned people. And it really brought something up in her, and she remembered back when she was a young woman, 13 or 14, and her grandmother and aunties came over, and they had this cream to put on her face, and they said, you know, this is going to make you beautiful, and they scrubbed it on her face. You imagine all these older women helping this young woman along, and it stung, it didn't feel good, and they went through this whole process, and when they got through, they looked at it and they said, oh, it didn't work, your skin's still the wrong color. In that moment, she saw that looking at herself was wrong, that this was something that was bad. It just so broke part of her heart. And though the family members that were trying to love her, trying to help her, were really affirming that she was less than all right. All of us have those moments in our childhood. Whether it was when we were told, you can be in the choir, just don't sing, just mouth. Or when somebody in your family didn't want to put your artwork up on the refrigerator. Because the tiniest thing that you heard that you're not all right, that there's something wrong with you, there's something broken with you, something that needs to be hidden if you're going to be accepted into the tribe of humanity, right? No wonder we have this shadow. And if you look at, I love Eeyore up there because he was always so sad because he always felt broken, right? His tail would come off. But if you look at the world in which we're in, they want to advertise us into sameness. You know, you think about it. What do you need to be like your neighbor? What do you need to be like the model or the actresses on TV? What is the cosmetic, the clothing, the latest gizmo that will help you be the perfect house person, whichever gender you might be, you know? In peer projection, you know, they have this, they have that, and we invest all this money into be the new and improved. How can you be new and improved? If you were new, you never were before. You can either be new or improved. You can't be both, right? So getting down to that unity truth that we are created whole. God does not make garbage. But boy, sometimes that's so hard to believe because there's all these other voices out there saying, you're pretty good, but you could be really great if you did this. If you looked like everybody else. If you acted like everybody else. If you thought like everybody else. Then we'd all be bored to tears, right? And when we do try to create this new or improved version of ourselves, what happens is eventually we forget who we really are. That kind of goes by the wayside because we've devalued it. We want to forget about it. We want to push that away. That goes into that shadow bag that we're carrying behind us. So who are you? Think about it. If we have to create ourselves to fit in, to be like everyone else in the world, to avoid being made fun of, not getting the job, whatever that might be, we do forget who we really are. And when that happens, you remember Alice, she kept eating those or drinking those things to make her smaller, make her taller? Well, when she starts doing something to fit in like that, everyone who knows us, when we do it, everyone who knows us loses something. See, when she got so big, you couldn't see all of her. She may have fit in because she ate the magic formula, whatever that was. But it's not just us that loses ourselves, but everybody that knows us. They don't get the opportunity to share in those wonderful gifts that we have in this world. Carl Jung, as a psychologist, is probably the closest to a New Thought unitic that I could think of in that profession. And he said, unfortunately, there can be no doubt that man is, on the whole, less good than he imagines himself or wants to be. Like we all want to be better. We all want to do better. We're always, because that's why we're on this journey. We're learning, we're growing. So everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. That secret that keeps growing. In inferiority is consciousness. One always has a chance to correct it. If an inferiority is conscious, we always have a chance to correct it. If we know that we are not a good speller, we learn how to use spell check. But if we don't admit to ourselves we're not a good speller, we're not going to do that stuff, right? So we need to be conscious of this place, our opportunity to grow. They call it inferiority. I call it an AFGO, another fabulous growth opportunity. F can be whatever you want it to be in the moment. Furthermore, it is in constant contact with other interests so that it is continually subjected to modifications. So if we're conscious of where we might have this shortcoming, not only do we work on that thing, but everything is interconnected. Just like our favorite part of the body is interconnected to others. So if we work on it, we're also impacting all the other aspects of ourselves. We don't grow first a thumb, and then a left arm, and then hair, whatever. We grow together. The same way in consciousness. As we work on one thing, it grows everything else within us. But if this inferiority is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected. It just grows in the darkness. Any of you ever had monsters in your bedroom when you were a kid? The crocodiles under my bed kept me in bed through the night, all the time. And, I'd never dare look at it, so that crocodile got bigger as I got bigger, right? So how do we find out what we've hidden? We've hidden it so well, we might not even realize that we've hidden it. We think, I've done my work. It's all out there. I'm doing real well. We all have those buttons that say, do not press this one. Do not press this one, yeah. So one of the clues is when we catch ourselves saying, the nerve of some people. Can you believe they did that? As soon as we start getting this antagonistic relative relationship to any other, there's probably a button there. It's probably pretty close to that bag we're carrying around. Watching ourselves where we get that reaction, that button push reaction. I love this one, the grand reflection. Anything we can see in somebody else, we first have to see within ourselves. There's that wonderful story about the Spaniards coming into what is now North America, and the natives did not recognize the ship because they hadn't seen anything like it before. Once we see something in ourselves, we see it in others. If we see it in others, we can only see that if we have it within ourselves. So it's a clue. If we find ourselves getting critical, if we find ourselves getting judgmental, guess who we're talking about? That part of ourselves that we're trying to keep back in that bag that we keep carrying with us that's getting heavier and heavier by the day. How about this button? Push me here to make me react like I always do. If you have family, they probably know your button placement really well, right? Have some fun pushing it. Control issues, when you catch yourself grinding your teeth because it's not happening according to your script. This is how it's supposed to be. Everybody else take their hands off, and when you find yourself really responding to that. Or gossiping in other supportive ways. Whenever we have that conversation about how somebody else needs improvement and they are not part of that conversation, that's gossiping. And why do we see it in them? Because we know that's what we need to work on in us. Or how about compulsive addictive behavior? I know nobody here is dying to get over there and have another one of those chocolate Hershey kisses. Except me, on that. Although, why do we do that? Why do we have these compulsive destructive behaviors? We know it's not good for us, and yet we do it. Because we don't want to deal with something that's hanging on back there. There is also the positive shadow, believe it or not. I don't like to use relative terms, but we know the stuff that we don't like that's broken and we feel is a threat to us. But there's also the positive side that we won't own. We give our power away. So here's some clues that this might be part of your shadow. There's some positive things back there. Somebody says to you, you look beautiful in that shirt. This old thing. Do you cringe when you get a compliment? Oh, I don't know how to handle that. How about, the talk was wonderful. And I'll go, oh, well, I really wasn't much. I get to do this one a lot. It's not me. It's, just really be able to accept that compliment. Or how about, thank you so much for that wonderful gift. You go, oh, it was nothing. Well, if it was nothing, why'd you give it to me, right? How many times do we belittle ourselves in our goodness? How many times do we do that? Just simply claim the gift and say thank you. You will not die. Lightning will not strike you. To just say that you deserve this, it's okay. Compliments are meant to say, I love you. I feel the oneness with you. You are great. You are safe. You are somebody I want in my tribe. And that's okay. It's okay to feel okay. I just want to end with a story from a little book called Kitchen Table Wisdom. And there was a young man he was great on the football team. He was a homecoming king, you know, the kind of character I'm talking about in high school. In his senior year, they found cancer in his leg. And he had to have an operation that took his leg, saved his life, but it also cost him his life, the life that he had, this very athletic young man who could do all these things. And so to cope with it, he went into drugs and alcohol. He didn't know what else to do. Finally, through his parents and the friends, they got him into therapy. And he went in there, he was angry. I mean, life, damn it, it's not fair. Why should this happen to me? What did I do that I deserve to have cancer in my leg? And he was just so angry, and the sessions went on, and all of a sudden the therapist noticed something had changed. And he came in talking about news articles he read about other people who had these debilitating diseases, like cancer, different things that had happened to them. And he didn't come in and talking about the people, but he talked about the caregivers. He goes, those doctors have no idea what they're saying. They don't know what it feels like to have this part taken from you. Those caregivers, they are lacking. Don't they get what's going on? And he was so passionate about the caregivers and the doctors and how they didn't really know what was going on. His therapist suggested, well, why don't you get involved? And ding, something went in his head, ding. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, when you first went in there, she asked him to draw a vase. And he started drawing the vase, and in the middle of it, all of a sudden, he drew this line and went up and down, up and down, up and down. Just the crack in this perfect vase, and that's what was happening with his life. So when the therapist, helped him to make some connections to get involved, and he started going around, and he talked to the doctors, these people that he had considered enemies before, to enlighten them about really what was going on with somebody who lost a part of their body like that. And he would meet with patients and talk with them. And there was this wonderful shift happening as he was finding a way to serve. Now one day he went into a room and there was a young woman there, and she had just had a double mastectomy not because she had cancer, but because her mother, her aunts, her sisters, she was carrying the gene, and this was a preventive measure. And she was feeling really bad, really bad. And everything he did would not bring even a smile to her face. And he had talked to a lot of patients by this time, having devastated, events in their life, health events in their life. So finally, he went over to the far part of the room, took off his leg, and started dancing on one leg. And she's looking at him, and she goes, I can't believe you're doing this. But you know what? If you can learn to dance on one leg, maybe I can learn to sing. Actually, they ended up getting married, these two. They made that connection that day. A few months later, he's back in his therapist's office. He's really coming to the end of therapy. He's really dealing with it. He's found a way to serve, to grow through this thing that's happened to him. And his therapist brought out the picture that he had done that first day with the broken vase. And she said, look, this is what you do the first day here. Look at this picture. And he looks at it and he goes, well, it's because it wasn't finished. And then he got a crayon and drew all these layers of light coming out of it. He got that in that awful shadow experience of his life, that terror, the light came through. So with that, we're going to take a little time to go into meditation. Let's affirm first. Let's get into the mood for meditation. We won't sing till afterwards, Greg. Let's affirm together. I am God's light. I have no need to hide seeming imperfections. Breathe. I allow my light to shine on all parts of myself, releasing the shadows so I can share all the gifts that are me. I am open to knowing who and what I really am. I am the light. And with that, we'll go into meditation. I will invite you to just close your eyes if it's comfortable for you, and just take a minute to be. As we take that breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. In this moment of peace, we know without a doubt that we have permission right now to set down that bag, that shadow bag, and to loosen the ties until all that is in the darkness comes forward to the light. For in truth, what is darkness but another shade of light? As we allow ourselves to become conscious of that which we've kept in the unconscious, we allow it to come forth at a pace that is comfortable for us, for our heart. As we claim back one by one that which is us. As we allow ourselves to move from being pieces to being whole. As we give ourselves loving permission to not only be whole unto ourselves, but to be whole and connected with all that is. We move into that space beyond the relative, beyond the judgment of good and bad. Allowing the heartbeat of the universe, the harmonics of infinity to whisper, "You are the light." And to allow ourselves to hear it, to believe it, to embody it. Our light is not greater or lesser than anyone else's. We are simply an integral part of all that is. The cosmos would be less if not for us. The crocuses hiding beneath the winter soil would be less if not for us. The mountains would not be quite as tall, the rivers not quite as swift, if not for our interconnectedness. So let us sit for a moment in the joy of knowing there is nothing that we need to hide, of knowing that we are worthy in ways beyond our understanding, and that we are safe. And as sure as we know this truth in this moment, we know in the moments to come, we will have times of forgetting. And so we complete this meditation by singing a wonderful song, "I'm Here to Remind You."
I'm here to remind you of your magnificence. Help you awake to all the wonder that you are. I long to show you all the joy you're worthy of. I'm here to remind you how much you're truly loved. show